Hi, it's Heather from Dawn Emporium, and today we're going to be talking about Franceska Mann. She is the SS killing ballet dancer. She was born on the 4th of February 1917, and her birth name is Franceska Mannheimer. She was a Jew born in Warsaw, Poland. She was a talented dancer and she studied at Irena Prusicka's dance school. I should have asked a Polish friend for help with how to talk. Dummy's guide, always good. In 1939, she came fourth in the international dance competition in Brussels, out of I think it was 125 people. She was considered one of the most promising and beautiful dancers in Poland and danced both classical and modern ballet, so she was very talented. By the beginning of World War II, she had married a man called Marek Rosenberg, so by then her full name was Franceska Mannheimer Rosenberg, but her stage name was still Franceska Mann. And she danced at the Melody Palace nightclub in Warsaw, which became part of the Warsaw Ghetto during the Nazi occupation. During that time, she and countless others were held prisoner in the Warsaw Ghetto, and I do know that she continued to perform during this time, as did others who spent the war in the Warsaw Ghetto. However, what I will say is a lot of the people in the Warsaw Ghetto were also forced to make munitions. I don't know if the artists, because I know the artists were still being very arty, were also making munitions. I don't know. My assumption is probably she was probably forced to make munitions along with everyone else. I know that some of the actual artists who drew pictures and wrote poetry and wrote books also made munitions, so I imagine that the dancers would have done as well. Since her death, some have tried to sully her name and say that she was a Nazi collaborator. Now, here's the thing, there were Jews who were Nazi collaborators in the Warsaw Ghetto. However, there are several reasons why I believe this is utter tosh, frankly. One is, I know the Nazis had a thing for burning paperwork. They were very good at that. But there's actual paper trails. I think because it's Poland, they didn't burn as much, I imagine. There's actual paper trails for most of the Nazi collaborators from the Warsaw Ghetto. Her name doesn't appear in them, but other collaborators' names do. So why would they write down one person's name but not another's? The next thing is she ended up being killed along with others who were again innocent Jews in the style of an innocent Jew by the Nazis. Surely you'd keep such a powerful frenemy alive. You wouldn't just kill them like she was nobody, would you? I wouldn't personally. You know, friends close, enemies closer. If I got a collaborator going on, I'd want them alive as a mole elsewhere. I'd send them to another ghetto or something and just say you'd escaped from the Warsaw Ghetto, go and move over there. You can tell us what's happening there. You've been handy here, go there. You wouldn't kill her, would you? I wouldn't anyway. Maybe I'm a bit more snidey than the average Nazi, but somehow I doubt it, because they were known for being snidey. Another more likely rumour is how she was caught. Now, the actual story of the Warsaw Ghetto is literally one of these little podcasts on its own. So we're not going into the full history, we're going into the bit about her and how she was caught. In January 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto had been up and running for 3 years by this point. So she'd been there for 3 years. Nazi forces entered the ghetto to round up more Jews to take and kill. According to reports, within hours, around 600 Jews had been shot in the streets and 5,000 had been taken from their homes to be sent to concentration and death camps. The Nazis expected no resistance because normally they had very little resistance. You've got to think this is 3 years in of being overworked, underfed, and having their souls crushed. Instead, what they were faced by is the locals, the Jews, out with handguns and Molotov cocktails, fighting back tooth and nail. Now, I think this is partly to do with the fact that in the 4 months up until January 1943, the Nazis hadn't been there. So the people had had time to recover a bit, to get a bit more, or to get over the hurt and the anger, and then to form into more of a militarised unit to attack. Instead of to defend, they went on the attack. Personally, I think that's what happened. And they'd probably been ready to attack for weeks, if not months before. And then as soon as those Nazis came in, they all had targets on them. Although initially successful in fighting off the Nazis and barricading themselves in the ghetto, after a failed plan to quash the uprising by Nazi commander von Semmern-Frankenegg, I couldn't find his actual rank, but this is not unusual for Nazi commanders. The SS tend to usually tell you what they are. Nazis tend not to, which sounds weird to me. It's a bizarre, backwards way of doing things. Heinrich Himmler took over to quash the Jewish uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. And he took control on the 17th of April 1943. So they'd had control for over 3.5 months at this point. He began the final assault on the eve of Passover, which was the 19th of April 1943. Now, if anyone knows anything about Nazi history, Heinrich Himmler was a lovely bloke who you'd want to invite round for tea, especially if you had some deadly nightshade that you wanted to get rid of, because you could put it in his tea. Several thousand troops stormed the ghetto, along with 2,000 Waffen-SS troops, nothing like overkill, under the command of Jürgen Stroop. Again, if you know anything about Nazis, you'll know the name Jürgen Stroop. Lovely guy. Again, another one for the nightshade. Or Aqua Tofana. Burned and blew up buildings, killing or deporting. Yes, that's an understatement of a word. At least 56,000 people. I am laughing as I say this. So only a few. And ended with the destruction of the Great Synagogue of Warsaw on the 16th of May. So you've got to think that was almost a month. All these thousands of Nazis had to fight just to get that far. So by this point, we were on for about 4.5 months. The Jews had been fighting over this tiny bit of land. It really was a tiny bit of land. And they were fighting tooth and nail for every square inch of it. So all I have to say is, big up the Jews. You put up so much of a fight over a tiny little ghetto. You know, so many times in history, it's made it sound like the Jews just put up no fight. They were either hiding or running. And it's nice to hear this story and hear the actual fighting that went on and how hard you fought. Because I am actually sick of hearing it like you were just, and when I say you, I mean the Jewish people as a whole. You were just sitting there going, oh, it's just the Nazis. Well, suppose I'm dead then. I'll just go and get worked to death, starved to death, 18 dozen things wrong with me while my immune system closes down, and then get gassed. Well, hey, it's nice to actually hear about the truth, the actual fight. So, we have all of that happening. So we're now at the fall of the Warsaw Ghetto. So she survived up until then, 16th of May. Now we're on to how she actually got caught. She was sold fake hope. And she was actually warned, everyone was warned by the Polish resistance that they thought it was a trap. But she was caught between hope and desperation. And that's what caught her. This is the Hotel Polski affair. In late 1941, so we've gone back 2 years, Jewish organisations in Switzerland made a pact with the Nazis that if they could prove via legitimate and legal paperwork that the Nazis were holding nationals from other countries, those people would be repatriated to their country of origin. And the Nazis agreed. Now, this is me. I wouldn't have trusted the Nazis, but they said so. Shook on it, whatever. Maybe signed paperwork. So, these Jews were sitting there going, look, you've got Jews from other countries in there. They're not all Polish or German or Lithuanian or wherever they were taking over that week. If we can prove that they're from other countries, will you let them go? And the Nazis said, yeah, sure, fine. Prove it. So, that's when a giant scrabble happened. And this is why it takes from late 1941 until 1943. So Switzerland, Palestine and multiple South American countries, including Paraguay, Honduras, El Salvador, Peru and Chile, start searching through their records for dead Jews. And they need proof that these people existed, their birth certificates, their death certificates, their driving licenses if they had them. Even if you need a license to have a dog, because some countries do or did then, any paperwork to say that these people are from this country, they went and they got it and then kind of hid the death certificate slightly. And then we're like, look, you've got that person, they're just there. It's defo them. That one there. Yeah, he definitely looks like he comes from Paraguay. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. They've then got that paperwork, but you've got to collect it. Here's the problem. So the Gestapo, along with Jewish collaborators, don't you want to slap them, decided to lure any remaining Jews out that had survived the literal flattening of the Warsaw Ghetto by saying the paperwork from all these different countries was ready to be collected at the Hotel Polski. Ranges differ, but somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 Jews went to collect paperwork. And then with that paperwork, they were supposed to await safe transport out of the Nazi-occupied area of Europe and then go and get repatriated or repatriated to their country of origin. So they came, this 2,500, 3,500 people, they went to the Hotel Polski. They went and collected their paperwork. Small groups were then taken to Vittel, a spa resort in Nazi-held France. And that was supposed to be their transit point to freedom. Later transports only made it to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, always a warning sign. The remaining few were murdered at Pawiak prison in Poland. The forged documents were found, and a lot of Jews were denied safe travel and instead ended up at Auschwitz, which we all know was just a holiday camp. I don't know why anyone moans about Auschwitz. Yes, I am being hugely sarcastic, don't worry. In a rather ironic footnote in history, anyone with Palestinian paperwork, whether it was forged, faked, or obviously written by a toddler, was given safe passage to Palestine. They didn't actually care. They turned around and said, you know what? You give us those Jews, we'll give you Nazi prisoners of war. And they did a swap. So all these Jews went to Palestine, all these Nazis went back to Germany. Bob's your uncle. Now, the reason why I think that's funny is because have a look at Palestine now. Thank you, Netanyahu. I had to get that dig in. That's not an anti-Jew thing, that's an anti-Netanyahu thing. So, Franceska ended up at Auschwitz. And yeah, this is where the story really kicks off. This is the bit that most people know about. The stories sort of split off into tangents. That I could see there were at least 3 people that lived until at least the 1970s and up till the 1990s that I can find that admit to seeing this happen. However, all of their stories slightly differ, but they do say these days that when you remember a memory, you're remembering the last time you remembered the memory, which means you're literally Chinese whispering a memory. Does that make sense? So every time you remember it, something changes slightly, just a tiny little bit. So by the time you've made it 50 years down the line, details are going to be slightly squiffy. Here are the known truths. It is believed that it was Franceska Mann who was in the room with other women. She was told, along with the group of other women, to strip naked. The male guards, there were male guards in the room, 2 of which their names are known. One was SS officer Joseph Schillinger, and the other was SS Sergeant Emmerich. Now, I don't know Emmerich's first name. Both were known for their brutality, especially Schillinger. As she was undressing, she attacked Schillinger, grabbed his handgun and shot him at least once. Most people say twice. The deadly shot was a shot to his bow, and Emmerich was injured but didn't die. Whether it was planned or not, her attacking Schillinger and Emmerich caused the other women to then take up arms and fight back. Now, some say they physically fought the remaining guards, others say they barricaded themselves in the room where they were. Either way, it was still fighting back. I am still big on those ladies for doing what they did. And then finally, the last part of the story was they were killed, most stories say, by machine gun or some other automatic or semi-automatic weapon. Now, like I say, stories differ all over the place. So some say the women were in the delousing area, others say they were in holding area, others say they were literally about to go into the gas chambers. Anywhere where a woman would be expected to get undressed. This allegedly happened in Auschwitz. Either way, they were told to get undressed. Some say Franceska seductively danced and the men didn't know where to look. And as they were trying to look away from her, because she was just showing too much flesh, I tell you, they used to sing women undress, she grabbed a gun and started shooting. Personally, just from what I've heard about Schillinger, if she was acting that seductively, I think he'd have jumped on top of her, because he did have that reputation, and I'm glad she killed him. So I don't believe the sexy dancing thing. However, I have seen about 30 seconds of a ballet that was done by a Jewish dancing troupe. I've forgotten who it is. That was a very good dance. I like that. So you get top marks for that. However, I don't think that's true, but it makes a good urban legend. The next one is she was undressing, refused to undress further than her undergarments, so she refused to take her bra and knickers off. Schillinger got in her face about it, so she whipped her bra off, chucked it in his face. As he was trying to get the bra off, she took his gun out his holster, started shooting. I can imagine that happening. And being a dancer, you are used to getting undressed and redressed very quickly. I think that could have happened. Another one that I heard was she grabbed the gun by chance and just started shooting. Again, I can imagine that happening, but if it did happen, it would have happened more often, because I imagine that there is more than one ballsy Jewish lady in the world. In fact, I have met several of them. And next to Irish and Gypsy women, I would say Jewish women are probably some of the most likely to take their slipper off and belt you on. So I can imagine them nicking someone's gun if they were sitting there. Now, Schillinger was meant to be under the influence, but I can't imagine him sitting there with his gun unholstered. Well, his gun unlatched from the holster for no good reason, especially when he's going into a room full of women. I honestly can't. So I do think that the pinging a bra off, chucking it in his face, nicking his gun is the most likely thing to happen. Speaking as someone who's done dancing, and sadistic men tend to be, their guns are their pets. They are. You know, I've upset so many Americans and Canadians because I'm English and a woman and can shoot on a beach. You know, the little BB guns? Well, they're rifles. I can shoot better with them than Americans and Canadians can, and I'm British, so what do I know about a gun? They get so upset. And you're just sitting there going, oh, bless your heart, we do have guns, you know. We just have better licensing. So, just thinking about what they're like, you know, because don't get me wrong, I have met nice Americans and Canadians. It's just the ones that are gun bunnies. They get so protective over weapons, even if they're not theirs, that they don't like it when a woman bests them. So a man walking into a women changing is going to make sure his gun is properly holstered. The holster is done up. He's not going to have his holster undone so a woman can nick it, especially if she's in fear for her life for any reason, because that's when she is most dangerous. Fight or flight. Franceska Mann was obviously very much fight. No, either way, she got the gun. She shot him twice, Emmerich once. Apparently, her beginning shooting started the women off. They either fought back or barricaded themselves in. Now, going by the fighting back scenario, the stories are actually quite similar. A man lost his nose, a man was scalped, and sometimes a man lost an ear. But it's usually a man lost his nose and a man was scalped. So, they are pretty horrific injuries. The barricading story, sometimes these two overlap. Sometimes, after injuring these Nazis, the women chucked them out, barricaded the doors. Other times, they barricaded the doors. Would you want to be barricaded in there with Nazis when you're trying to save yourself from Nazis, even if they are injured? They still have weapons on them. Personally, I think they might have chucked them out if they were going to do anything. The next thing that happened is them all getting shot. So like I say, I think they chucked them out. Because if they'd have kept them in, all of the Nazis that were in that room would have ended up dead, because they would have all been shot with the women, because apparently they just shot through the building. So, yeah. I have to say that they do get a complete gold one up on that, because they had a quick death. Those gas rooms could take... I got told it was about 10 minutes to die of those gases. It'd only be a few minutes to die of the average gunshot wound. Neither of which is a nice death, but they went for the quick one. I am big on that. Good on you, girls. So, whatever truly happens, Franceska Mann and those women should be remembered, because they never gave up. Even in the face of death, they never gave up. They took as many down with them as they could. Tooth and nail, quite literally. Taking eyes out is quite easy, but scalping someone, taking someone's nose off and their ear, that is some doing. That really is some doing. They fought back big time. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to share their story is because you don't really hear stories of people in concentration camps fighting back. You know, not like this. I mean, concentration camps had Jews, gypsies, gays, African, Caribbean and disabled folk in them. And just about every story makes it sound like people accepted death. And you've got to think, even though these people had really only just arrived at Auschwitz, they had had 3 years of torture before they'd even got that far in the Warsaw Ghetto. They weren't as bad as if they'd spent the previous 3 years in a concentration camp, granted, but they weren't far off it. But they still managed to fight back, which is awesome and should never ever be forgotten. So, yeah, she is very special. She should be remembered. Not just because she was some kind of, I don't know, ninja ballet dancer who goes around killing the SS, but because she was something special, something that the world lost because of hate. But instead of just losing because of hate, the world has lost so many people because of hate or obsession, or even just business as normal. Have a look around the world. Have a look at how much hate and obsession and just everyday business has changed the world, and the way things are done, people interact. And then think of her just wanting to be a dancer every day from a little girl, working herself to the bone. I mean, I know from ballet dancing, you break bones all the time and you just carry on. So she was hard. She was very hard. And then she lost everything time and time and time again. But when it came to the point of losing her life, she was like, no, that's enough. No, you see, this is the thing. You've made me lose my home, my family, even my synagogue, my city, my area, my job, my money, everything, my name. Now you want to take my life. Well, then I'm going to make sure I'm not the only one to stop breathing today. And you know what? Good on her. Honestly, good on her. Because when faced with a situation, none of us in the modern world can really understand. Well, the Western world can really, truly understand. She carried on. She didn't give up. And that should be applauded in so many ways. Nobody should forget her. She did well. Yeah. She's a good woman. Shame there's not more like her today. Anyway, that's enough of me. Hope you're having fun and know your power. Bye.